The proof of that is to show you an up-to-date picture of the so-called founding father of this country. Some scholar or sculpture had a picture of him put as being an emperor. And who is this guy? Guess who this is? At the top of the page, if you can move in on it, on the right there. Mm-hmm. Who is that?
George Washington.
Camera moving in on him? George Washington. Showing that he's a Roman, a Edomite. Now Rome is sitting over America. This is the so-called founding fathers, because all the white people came out of Europe before they came over here. When the white man came over here in the United States of America, it was the Israelites was over here. The reason that Columbus came to this part of the world is recorded in the Apocrypha. If you can get me that way, we came to another land. The reason that Columbus came to this country, to the United States of America, is because he had gotten information out of the Bible that the Israelites is over here. So we're going to read the scripture that he had went in and found out that the Israelites is over here. And he came over here for one thing in mind, to destroy the Israelites and to rip them off and to rape and rob them. That's what Columbus came over here for. He didn't come over here for no peace and no love. And he didn't show none to the North American Indians when he got over here. You got the scripture? Now here's what Columbus read. They showed this in the movie that he came, the last movie that came out about Christopher Columbus. That he had went in the scriptures and knew that these people over here in the United States of America were Israelites. Read.
Second Esdras, the 14th chapter, the 40th verse. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hoshea the king, whom Salmanasseh the king of Assyria led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land.
So Christopher Columbus read this. Here's a picture of Christopher Columbus. He read these scriptures. It was in the scrolls and in the scriptures in the time of Ferdinand and Isabella. And he knew that the same scripture that we just read, that these people was Israelites. This is a picture of Christopher Columbus. Looked like a woman, like a homosexual. Read on.
That they might there keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river.
This is the same scripture Christopher Columbus read before he came to the shores of America. This is why he wanted to come here, because he knew that the Israelites was a rich nation. Read on.
But they took this counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt.
This was what Christopher Columbus read. Read on.
For the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the flood till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of 1.5 years, and the same region is called Ahrayah.
Osiris is another word that means another land. That's what it means, Osiris, which means another land. This is the same scripture that Christopher Columbus them studied and read, and that's how he knew that the Israelites is over here in the Americas. Now, since I'm on this topic about the Israelites being here in Americas, I'd like to show you a map showing you how this took place when they came over here. If you can zero in on this map, it's showing you what was taking place over here. There was a war, the 100-year war that was going on in Europe, ended at the point of 1453, when the Israelites was overthrown by the Ottoman Empire. And the Israelites was fighting among themselves throughout Europe. As the brother stated earlier, we've stated on many shows that we governed Europe for 1,000 years. It was called a Byzantine. The western part was called a Byzantine, and the other part was called the Holy Roman Empire. The reason it was called the Holy Roman Empire is because the Jews was ruling Europe. That's why it was called the Holy Roman Empire. The Byzant, which is recognized as one of the most valuable coins even today, has held its value for over 200 years. The Byzant Byzantine, gold, the golden kingdom. All right, we govern these empires, we govern these countries for over 1,000 years. Now here's a picture, I'm going to come back to that map in a second, but here's a guy the brother spoke about earlier that took over Rome, Septimius Severus. You can clearly see that he's a black man, Septimius Severus, in 193 AD. Took over Rome and put all his black armies up and controlled Europe. His sons and Elagabus and Maximius and all these other descendants out of his lineage controlled Europe for 1,000 years. All right? Even the Vikings, that goes back, that they came to the shores of America during the time of 1000 AD. These was Israelites also. The Vandals, the Huns, the Goths, these was Israelites. The Visigoths, they was Israelites, all through Europe and through Rome. All right? So we know the facts and we know the truth and we know the history of the Most High. All the great scholars.
Let me ask this question while you're on that.
Yeah.
What happened to his wife and his son?
What happened to his wife is a typical case of whitewashing. Like we read last week about them, the physiology of whitewashing, the pictures of the black relics and paintings.
Isn't that the head of another son, of his son there?
It is the head of his son that's been completely blacked out because they couldn't change it. They couldn't whitewash it enough. So they just took something and just marked it out. Right? Now, brother want to read a scripture about them doing this, changing the physiology of these pictures and putting their images in the pictures in the books. Read.
1 Maccabees, the 3rd chapter, the 48th verse. And laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images.
That's what the so-called white man did. They took the records and they painted their own images in those records. And one guy in particular that was known that helped to destroy the North American Indians and got a stronghold in Europe under the order of Alexander, Pope Alexander VI of Rome. Later on, order came up under this guy called Ignatius of Loyola. All right, he was the one of the Jesuit orders that helped to overthrow the Israelites throughout the world, throughout the United States of America, and throughout the world, called the Jesuit order. These guys was the militiamen under the Pope Alexander's and the other white popes after the Middle Ages, after the 1400s, the Renaissance.
He looked like a skinhead.
Yeah, he looked just like a skinhead. I believe it's 1491 when he was born. And later on, this order grew and took place, and they became real big. In the latter part of the 1500s, became real big, and they were the one that set up Pope Paul. He was really with Pope Paul IV and Pope Paul V. All right? And they're the one that sent the Jesuits over here in North America to onslaught and murder the Indians. Christopher Columbus had different guys coming over here with him, like Druids and so forth, to slaughter the North American Indians. That's all recorded in the records. There's another book that talks about it. It says St. Ignatius and the Jesuits. And the Huron Indians did a whole lot to destroy them. The Huron Indians and the other book about the last of the Mohegans and so forth did a whole lot to fight for this country and to keep the so-called white man out of this country. And these Jesuits, they got a stronghold under these different Spaniards and the other leaders that came over here to the shores of America. Now I want to go and show you this picture again to show you something, how that, hold the mic, what was taking place during the time that we left out of Europe. These guys that took over Europe in the history was Oliver Cromwell. His group was called the